Hola, buenas tardes. Desde la Universidad del Norte nos sentimos muy complacidos de contar con su participación en esta conferencia que hemos preparado especialmente para ustedes. Es momento de asumir nuevos retos y desde Uninorte compartimos conocimiento y experiencias que contribuyan a su desarrollo personal y profesional. Mi nombre es Andrea del Río y soy asesora de mercadeo en Uninorte. Y el día de hoy tengo el gusto de presentarles a nuestros docentes y conferencistas, Erika Ferrer, Jorge Linero y Rodrigo Rodríguez, quienes desarrollarán esta conferencia en la cual discutirán el uso de protocolos de lectura para el desarrollo de la fluidez en lectura y a su vez el desarrollo de la fluidez en el habla a través de un proyecto de investigación desarrollado con estudiantes de diferentes programas de inglés en la Universidad del Norte. Antes de dar inicio a la conferencia, quisiera presentar a nuestros conferencistas invitados. Los tres son docentes e investigadores de tiempo completo del Departamento de Lenguas Extranjeras de la Universidad del Norte. Erika Ferrer es coordinadora de los programas de especialización y maestría en la enseñanza del inglés de la Universidad del Norte. Magíster en enseñanza y aprendizaje de lenguas de la Universidad de Liverpool. Jorge Linero es magíster en la enseñanza del inglés de la Universidad del Norte y Rodrigo Rodríguez es doctor en estudios de segunda lengua en la Universidad de Porto. Durante el desarrollo de la conferencia podrán realizar vía chat las preguntas que surjan, las cuales serán respondidas por nuestros conferencistas al finalizar su intervención. Para dar paso a nuestros invitados, les recordamos que esta conferencia es presentada por los programas de la maestría y especialización en la enseñanza del inglés de la Universidad del Norte y nuestra nueva maestría en lenguaje y sociedad en investigación también de la Universidad del Norte. Si requieren más información de los mismos, de estos tres programas, voy a estar enviándoles un link a través del cual pueden agendar citas con nuestras coordinadoras administrativas de cada uno de estos tres programas. Los dejo entonces con nuestros tres conferencistas. Adelante, Erika, Rodrigo y Jorge.
Muchas gracias, Andrea. Buenas tardes a todos. Vamos a empezar mientras esperamos a que lleguen los demás attendees. Vamos a ir haciendo un pequeño icebreaker que tenemos con el QR que tenemos ahí. I just forgot that I was supposed to speak in English for this. Okay, here we go. Let's do that again. Okay, so we're gonna get started with the icebreaker that we had in the QR code that you can see there, and then we're gonna move to the. So you can like use your phone to scan it, or you can just click on the link that I'm writing in the chat right now. Just click there and then you will find your way there. This is just a warm up, an icebreaker activity before we actually get started in a couple minutes. Okay, just to see where you are, where you come from, what you're doing now. We have 50 people online. This is great. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to go there just to see. Ooh, okay. So here we go. We have 14% of people abroad. Atlántico, lots of people probably around Barranquilla, in the Barranquilla area. Okay, nice. I am just like putting the link in the chat for whoever comes. They can just go ahead and click there in the link in the chat and participate in the icebreaker. We're trying to do this because we know that the interaction is not going to be like that part of the presentations, but we're going to have some interaction before and some interaction at the end. And then you can listen to us in a little less boring light, I guess. Okay, so look at you. We have almost half of the people in Atlántico. Come on, Cartagena. Really? Nobody in Cartagena? Or Sucre? Yep. Good. So we did that just like to put like in the region, because we know like lots of people come to Uninorte from this region, but we're so glad to see that we have 15% of people who are either in another place of the country or abroad. Actually, there are more people outside of Colombia than in other places of Colombia. Okay. We have 35 people participating there out of the 50. This is great. Of the 60, we have 60 people online now. All right. Okay, we're gonna move from this activity, last opportunity to participate. Can Atlantico hit the 50% mark in 5 seconds? 4, 3, 2. Okay. We're back. Okay, people got like, okay. Okay, so let's move. So I have a second question for you guys. What are you having? Whoa, some people got ahead. So what are you having? Are you having a drink right now? If you're not having anything, that's fine. We strongly recommend you to have something to drink while you listen to us. Get there, get comfortable. Ooh. Okay, water and no drink. Okay, ooh, coffee is coming back. No drink. Oh, we have people from Duitama in the chat. Nice. Duitama. Is that near UPTC? No, that is, isn't Duitama? I don't know. Soda, nice. So we have like soda. I have tea. So let's see who. I think Erika has tea too, right? Or coffee? Tea. Okay. There we go. So this is just, we're making some time. Let's see how many people we have online now. Okay. So we can go ahead. Yeah, Duitama near Tunja, right? There you go. Okay. So last question. We have a last question. And we have the winner is water. Good. Drink lots of water. I'm so glad to see. We have like, teachers are healthy people. They don't drink that much soda, I think. But we have a few though. It's refreshing depending on where you are. And lastly, I would like just to see in one word, describe your experience with teaching during this pandemic. I'm assuming you are teachers and that you're interested in this conference, but if you're not teaching, that's fine. Just like your experience as a learner, maybe. Enriching, I love that word. Challenge, challenging. So the bigger you see the word, the more frequent it is. And we see a winner. We have challenging, enriching, problematic, chaotic, busy, enlightening, cool, exhausting, depressing. Oh, we are there already, huh? Self-learning, opportunities, unexpected, hard, innovation, heroic. Okay. So what do we have? Hard, challenges, challenging, enjoyable. Well, I really like that we are like I have made this activity in other I did this activity a couple times before, and this is like the most optimistic response that I have ever got. This is really nice see that you are enjoying yourselves with this and that you are finding it as an opportunity to learn and experience. We all know, we have been there, we teach too, and we know that it has not been only like a bed of roses so far. So let's see, hope, experience, opportunity, school. So I think it's time. We are already there. Thank you for your participation to everyone who participated. I think we can start to move to the next part of the actual presentation. Thank you. So if you have any questions, as always, you have a slot to make them, and make sure to do that if you need to as we develop, and we'll have a room for questions at the end of the presentation. All right, so I'm gonna give it to Erica now.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Thanks a lot. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. We really appreciate your presence here, and we're going to try to take advantage of time and perhaps show you something that we can talk about, share experiences, and take something from. So what we're going to talk about here today is reading fluency, right? Using protocols on online read aloud platforms in order to develop reading fluency. Now, we need to clarify why we decided to focus on reading fluency. But before doing that, we need to say what we understand for this term. So reading fluency is demonstrated when users of a language can demonstrate a natural and smooth flow of ideas and language. So once it's like a convention we have as language speakers, right? So when you listen to somebody reading, you can say, well, this is an effective speaker or not so proficient speaker or reader because of that natural or smooth flow of ideas while reading. Reading fluency is one area that has been neglected, there is a tendency to neglect it in EFL because of several reasons. One of them is the several approaches that have been very popular in EFL, approaches like the natural approach, communicative language teaching that conceive reading fluency as something spontaneous that develops as learners learn the language. So because of these ideas, then it's been a little bit neglected in the EFL context. And some authors understand or have presented or researched reading fluency as a construct that works not only on developing reading comprehension, but also develops speaking skills. So there is a correlation between developing reading fluency and developing speaking skills. So to understand a little bit more this concept, and I'm gonna try to be fast here, but just to give a little bit of the constructs that we used. Reading fluency is one of the 5 areas of reading instruction. So to develop reading instruction, we generally work on phonemic awareness, which is the individual sounds produced in a language, the basic minimal sounds that can be produced in a language. Phonics, which is the combination of those basic sounds. Vocabulary that includes, lexics and semantics and the meaning of words, how these words can be used in context to create meaning, and then reading comprehension. Together with those 4, fluency is one of the areas in reading instructions. And in EFL context is one of those that is less worked on. Reading fluency can be also understood in different ways. So you may understand reading fluency as in terms of accuracy and automaticity. This has to do with like how fast and how correctly you can identify words as you read, and then whole texts as you read. So this has to do with accurate and automatic recognition and reproduction of language while reading. Prosody, which is basically the musicality of language. So aspects like phrasing, intonation, stress, that can also be understood as fluency. Fluency can be understood as skilled reading, period. Like the point is to understand, the point is to read with certain flow of thoughts, and then reading comprehension, reading fluency is immersed in the concept of reading comprehension. And some other authors have understood reading fluency as a bridge to comprehension. So there cannot be effective comprehension if there is no effective reading fluency. So one thing leads to the other. Some of the most common ways to measure reading fluency is through word correct per minute or word count per minute, because it's the most practical, is the one that you can see, is concrete. How many words a student in the reading process, how many words a student covers or can advance from the beginning or starting point up to the end. The point is not the measurement. The point is when we use word correct per minute as the only measurement of reading fluency. It's an important one, but then we have to go for more analytical ways to see reading fluency, which also include not only the number of words that has to do with the pacing, but also the phrasing, the smoothness, the expressiveness, that all of those make part of reading fluency. Now, it's undeniable that reading fluency, it's an oral fluency, both are very highly valued in EFL contexts, because you can, like, learners of a language can be judged basically on the basis of how fluent they sound when they speak or when they read. And also, fluency is included in testing, important tests, uncommon and very demanding tests like TOEFL, like IELTS, like Cambridge. All of them include an element of reading and speaking fluency in their assessment. So it is valid. Now, reading fluency can be developed through the work on online reading out loud platforms. So now that we have technology can help us a great deal in developing students' reading fluency and therefore, hopefully, speaking fluency. So these platforms, some of them have been created with the explicit purpose of helping with the students' development of reading fluency. Some others basically work on the development of reading comprehension in general, but with a little bit of creativity, we teachers can use these tools, many of them that are free online, and then use them to help students develop their reading fluency. Technology, what we're presenting today is something that perhaps 10, 20 years ago wouldn't have been possible, because it's an element that technology has brought and we can use. Something important in working on platforms is the protocols. So protocols are basically ways to structure, in this case, the reading process, so it supports students' learning. So protocols have a purpose. Protocols are characterized by sequence of steps. They include elements of feedback or interaction, and their ultimate goal is to take students to transfer whatever they do as part of the protocols to extend it to other processes that they do while learning a language. So I want to share with you, just in case it is of your interest, some tools that you can find on the web that are free, and you can use depending on whether you have the technology or if you can adapt it, or if you cannot pay for something, your institution, or you can pay for it. So there is a little bit of everything that teachers can take from. So one of them is Read Theory. Read Theory allows you to create classes online and to keep track of your students' work. They recommend that a teacher has 10 classes, 35 student classes. It's like the recommendation that they're giving here, and a teacher should have a maximum of 10 classes. That's what the platform allows for. This is another very nice platform for development, which is the Dream Reader. So it has different levels of readings. It also brings not only the text, the written texts, but also the spoken texts. So the text is also read aloud for students to have the text, the written text, and the audio they can compare with and then reproduce. This is also free. This one, Easy Reading, has an important number of texts depending on your students' levels. So with this one is when I say that perhaps we can be a little bit creative and then add the audio, because this one has the texts and some activities but does not have audio. And ultimately in developing reading fluency, you would prefer to have, you know, students exposed to spoken texts. Well, and these ones are also accessible, but these ones required licenses. The one that we used was this one that Jorge is going to talk a little bit more about, Read Naturally Live. And our the study that we conducted was based on this platform, which we're going to be speaking into more detail, explaining into more detail in a moment. So in this study, we considered that oral reading fluency in a foreign language is directly related to oral fluency. Therefore, developing oral reading fluency can most likely transfer into developing oral fluency. So this is the idea that we decided to approach in this study. So I'm going to pass it on now to Jorge.
Right, thank you, Erica, and good afternoon, everybody. Continuing with the idea of this study, then these were the research questions that guided this process. The first one had to do with the effect of these reading aloud protocols on students' fluency in EFL as measured by holistic measures. We will talk a little bit more about that, what those are later. Also, we wanted to see what was the difference, or if there was a difference, a significant difference in the word correct per minute after 9 to 11 weeks of reading aloud protocols on these students. And what are the expectations on fluency development in word correct per minute, aided by these reading protocols for EFL students? You see that this question is crossed out in this slide because we are not going to talk about this today due to time constraints. Right. Next, please. Now, the methods that we used in this study, we used a quantitative method with an ex post facto research design, which is something that in which investigators start the research after the fact has already been completed. So there is no intervention of the researchers during the investigation. We also collected records available during the course and that finished the protocols in the spring of 2020. And we ended up with students within 3 proficiency levels: beginner, intermediate, and advanced, according to the Common European Framework of Reference. So the participants, we started in January of 2020 with around 200 undergraduate students in 4 levels, and there were some control groups. Now, due to the pandemic, we couldn't continue with this amount of students, and this also made us change the research design because initially it was an experimental design with a control group, but now we had to change to the one that I just mentioned due to the COVID, and we ended up with 88 students on March 2020. And they were divided into 3 levels. We had level 0, which were like students with a proficiency level of below A1, with 21 students. Level 6 students that were lower B1. We had 42 students there. And then the level 8 that were like upper B1 proficiency level. There we had 25 students, all of them from different majors at Uninorte. Next, please. Now, the instruments that we used in this study, we mainly used the read aloud protocol reports. Now, as Erica mentioned earlier, we use Read Naturally. That is a commercially available platform. Well, you have to pay for it. It's not free. But then in this platform, students are assigned readings with different complexity levels, depending on their proficiency. Now, this platform is not designed for EFL students. It's designed mainly for students that are in a higher level. And but we were trying to use it with EFL students in this case. Now, how does it work? First, we had to set the goals for students. And in order to do this, we benchmarked with some of our own students in the different levels to identify what were some possible goals that were easy for them to obtain. Then they were assigned a level of difficulty and a threshold of word correct per minute. And these protocols on this platform were divided into synchronous practice where students work independently, and then there was a synchronous passing stage, which I will mention in detail in an upcoming slide. Now, the Read Natural report included several scores, which were the call timing scores, self-assessed errors, hot timing score, hot timing errors, and expression scores. Now, for this study, we only used the hot timing score and the expression scores. There you can see a little sample of a report where they have the student's name and there is some information. But we try to use just the hot timing score and the expression score that I will also explain how it works and in the platform. Next, please. Now, what are the stages of these protocols and how does it look in and Read Naturally? Now, there are several stages in these protocols, but we decided to use only 6, which are the ones that you can see on the slides. The first one that refers to keywords, students, they could see some keywords that were going to appear in the reading with the pronunciation and a definition of these words. Well, it's worth mentioning that all these stages were mandatory for students to complete before moving on to the next one. Then at the call timing stage, students would read the text and they would do it at their own pace with no intervention from anyone, and that would give them a score. After that, they would have to read along the text 3 times. The first time that they would listen to it would be like at a slower pace, and then the other 2 were at a more regular or natural pace. After this, they had to practice reading themselves, trying to imitate their speech rate on from what the platform gave them, and this also gave them a score. After that, they would have a short reading comprehension quiz, and in that at that stage they were ready for the passing. That was the hot timing. In this stage was the only stage where the professor or the instructor intervened, and then we as researchers, we would listen to the students, and then we would decide if they reached the threshold, also with the aid of the platform, and then that would give a score of the word correct per minute and the expression scores that are given by the instructor. Next, please. So we ended up with this profile of students. They were in the English 0 or the lowest proficiency level. They were assigned a level of 1.5 out of 8. The maximum level was 8. It was from 1 to 8. The passing threshold was 80 word correct per minute for these students, and they completed 9 protocols. The English 6 course was assigned a level 4 according to Read Naturally with 110 word correct per minute to pass, and they completed 11 protocols. And in English 8, they were assigned a level 6 with 130 word correct per minute passing threshold, and they completed 10 protocols. And the measures that were used were words correct per minute, the expression scores that were like prosodical performance of the reader in the hot timing on a scale from 1 to 4. And we had an integrated reliability in these scores, very good ones, because we had some other raters to compare to our rating. So this means that these scores can be trusted. Now I'll pass it on to Rodrigo, who will continue with the statistical analysis.
Thank you, Jorge. So to complete, we had all this array of data, and then we had these questions, and then we had the pandemic. And with all the data and all the changes that Jorge mentioned that we have to do to the design of the study, we came up with this statistical analysis to determine, first of all, if there are any differences from where students start and where students end. And for that, we just use the descriptive stats, and we did some t-tests to determine how each read aloud protocol affected the fluency of students. We designed a linear mixed regression that it looks a little complicated, but it's not really. The word count per minute of each student per reading was the dependent variable that we had, what we wanted to track for. And then we used alpha, in this case, is the intercept of the model, and J is each student. So we have A sub J is the intercept of the student, and then we have the slope, and then we have each reading, because in the results, you're going to see that we have each reading has a number, and that is the sequence. So in this case, we treat it as an ordinal variable. So we saw the performance in each reading of in word count per minute of each student. And obviously, we had to leave room for the error of each reading per student. To determine the size of the change of the students beyond significance, we use effect size. And you'll see, this is going to make a lot of more sense when we go to the next stage, okay? So bear with me. So here are the results. What happened? For the first question, that we wanted to know if the read aloud protocols actually affected the fluency in EFL, we took only, as Jorge mentioned, two variables: the words correct per minute, which is a speech rate holistic variable, and then we use expression scores. We're going to start with expression scores because those are the easier to explain, and they start, as you can see, in all the groups, there was progress as expected. They were working on that, so there were progress. This scale, as Jorge mentioned, also go from 1 to 4, right? And as you can see on the axis X, there is, we go all the way to 4 in some of them, but in some of them, we stay a little bit below it. So in level 0, we started with an average score of 2.7, and we went all the way to, Erika? 3.9. So that means that we had a gain of 1.7, right? In level 6, 1.2, sorry, 1.2. In level 6, we started with an average score of 3 points, and we ended up in 3.7. So that's an easy one. We got a 0.7 gain. And in level 8, we started with an average expression score of 3.5, and we finished with the highest possible. So this is expected, and this is a pattern that you're going to see throughout the study with the other variables. They have particularly distinctive profiles, but only in this variable study, we could see actual changes across all the courses studies. Now, could you go back just a little, Erika? Yeah, so we wanted you to focus in the standard deviations that are like those whiskers that come out from the median. So those whiskers, you can see that in level 0, they started really big and they grow, they shrink a little by the end of that. So that means that we have less variability in each course, which means that they are probably getting more homogeneous as a group. We don't have those different profiles. They come more that. We can see that in level 0 and in level 8, you see how the whiskers also in level 8 start really big and grow and shrink. In level 6, we did not see that. We saw that the scores improved, but we had a lot of variability in the course. So we had students who had like good profiles, but they were also on the lower end of the profile. And this is going to be important for us later. Thank you, Erika. Now, the second variable that we studied was words correct per minute. And as you can see, level 0, we had, just without the numbers, you can see that the course that took the most advantage of these read aloud protocols was level 0. In only 9 protocols, they had an increase of 17.3 words per reading. So these students started like at 83 maybe, and they finished around 100 words. So our level 0 students, they ended up reading 17 more words by the end of the intervention than what they started with. That is a huge leap in terms of fluency. Remember, these are words correct. These are not just like gibberish and all stuff. These are correctly pronounced words. We also have in level 6, we have an inconsistent pattern. As you can tell, it started to go up a little at the beginning, and we were really excited. And then we don't know, we have some hypotheses of why this could happen, but their performance started to go down a little, and then they caught up a little bit, but they never recovered. Actually, there was no significant increase in their production. In number of words correct per minute. We have some hypotheses, and if we have time during the QA section of the talk, we will be happy to respond to those. And in level 8, we also saw some increase in the number of words. Their increase was not as quick and as big, as large as in level 0, but that is also expected, right? Do we also expect that people in higher levels take a little more time to make progress towards their proficiency levels in general? And like I always say, we always joke about this, like in level 0, if you know one word and you know another word, you have, statistically, that means you know the double that you knew before, right? And if you know 2 words and then you learn 2 more, you still are doubling. So the growth in level 0 in lower levels of proficiency is exponential, and we kind of expected that. But we did not expect that it was so consistent across time, which is good that we did this study for that. Thank you. And just to add to that, we have like consistent profiles in level 0 and level 8, and there are like weird things going on in level 6. This is another way to look at the data. Erica, go ahead. We made those lines that are totally arbitrary. Well, we can tell, for example, in level 0, how the standard deviations of the words correct per minute, this is a different variable than what we saw before, actually shrink. It becomes smaller. So again, this means that the group is getting closer to the mean, to the average of the class. So we have a more homogeneous class, and that is really, really good, because the less variability we have in the class, the more consistent are going to be the progresses that we're going to make, we assume, right? In level 8, I want you to look at the graph below. It's also the same. But this course actually started with very little variability. They are in level 8, they know their stuff, they are in, I think this is the last level, so they already are there. But even so, their variability was smaller and smaller by the end of the semester. And we had only like small outliers. Now, if we turn our attention to the graph in the middle, to level 6, we can tell why we had different results. Look at the size of those standard deviations there, and the quartiles are big. And also, Erica, could you show us those points that you see outside of the graph are the outliers. So those outliers are the people who made it like super good, or that were out of like particularly lagging behind the group. And we see that in this particular case, we had at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who were either really, really good for their class, or they were lagging a little bit behind. And we know that when we do that statistically, that have a strong effect in the terms of the residuals that it has in relation to the means. So that explains a lot why the stats we ran didn't fare really well in level 6. Thank you. And now, so we are going, so the first question was answered. Is there a progress? Is there a difference? The answer is yes. Now let's see how significant that difference is, right? We have three courses, and we found, as we expected, we had level 0 and level 8. They had their performance in the reading fluency was significantly different at the end of the semester than at the beginning, but in level 6, that was not the case. We had a really strange case going on with level 6, and we believe that one of the causes could be that their proficiency is not at one level particularly, but they have like a range of proficiency. And we also have, because they come, they are in that grade and they could come enter the levels at different times. They are not exactly, they don't come. So people who are in level 6 did not take 5 levels of English before necessarily. Some of them did, but some of them didn't. So that is something also we know that there's something going on with the learning plateau. That is like people in intermediate levels take a little more time to show progress than people at the beginning and people at the end. So those are just our hypotheses that we're working on, but we really don't know the reason why, because their treatment was similar across the population. Now, we know that it was different from the first reading and from the last one, and this is where the linear regression model comes really handy, because we need to see also what is the effect of each reading. We know that the first one and the last one was different grades, but we decided to see, yeah, but like, when do you see the change? And if we see that change, is that change consistent or it shows some variability? I mean, people go up and then they go down and then they go up. And we had pretty sweet results, to be honest. I want you to look at level 6, spoiler alert, nothing happened with level 6. We did not find any significant difference. We see some variability. We were really, really close. Like if you look at reading 8, for example, we were really, really close to get significance. And we actually got some significance there actually at 0.5 level. But that was not consistent because in the next one, the variability went up again. Now, in the levels that we found differences, so in the previous question, we compare the intercept, which is reading number 1, to reading number 9, and we saw that was a difference. But in this study, we actually found out that in these levels, from reading 4, the performance in the study, the performance in reading fluency was significantly different from the first one. So after 4 readings, we know that there is a significant difference, which is great. And not only that, the difference is consistent. It doesn't come down or whatever, but it just keeps being different. And the same happened with level 8. As expected, they took a little more time to show changes. We have to wait until reading 7, but there was a significant change and it kept being consistent. Now, we know that it's different, and you see it's the same p-value, right? It's 0.001. We know that. Then we said like, okay, so this statistic just show us that, but we wanted to know if there is some different progress, because reading 4 and reading 9, for example, in level 1, could be exactly the same. So students stabilized there and they did not move there, and that statistic wouldn't show us that. So we decided to use another statistic that was the effect size. And I want you to look at the column that says effect size. And it's, so the highlighted, the ones in bold, the values in bold are the ones that are medium or large effect size. Could you show the animation, Erica, please? Go ahead, yes. Yes, go ahead. So there we go. So when we are talking about effect sizes, is the size of the correlation between an effect, in this case, the read aloud protocols, and the dependent variable, which are the word count, the words correct per minute. In other words, think about this effect size in this term. The farther that number is from 0, the more progress the students are making. So I have 0 when I started. That number is not necessarily 0. They know something, but statistically that is our starting point. That is our intercept. That is our 0. And then we track the progress, and we can see how those numbers keep growing and growing in every read aloud protocol. So there was evidence that they were actually progressing, and we know exactly, we quantify how much they were progressing per protocol per week. And it's really good because in the last read aloud protocol of level 0 was 2.5. That is an extremely large effect size, even for conservative measures. I think like Plonsky in 2014 came out for those thresholds for linguistic studies, and that is in the large side. In level 8, we had a medium effect size, which is not as big as in level 0, but there was a significant difference, and it was also consistent. 1.18 is not significantly different from 1.2, so it was also a median effect size. Okay.
All right, now as part of the discussion, according to the first question about the effect of the reading aloud protocols on student fluency, well, we could identify that there was significant progress in terms of fluency, prosody, and intelligibility of students. Additionally, there was this promoted discipline of study and engagement with the fluency exercises. And this could be connected to the situation that we were in, well, we still are, in which students, they had, due to COVID, since they're home, they don't have like the pressure of speaking in front of another person. So this definitely lowered the levels of anxiety of students, and they had the opportunity to practice several times until they got it right. And definitely these measures of word count per minute and expression scores show that there is a significant evidence of progress once there is a scaffolded productive when they're working on productive oral skills in a scaffolded way.
Well, as for question number 2, which was, is there a significant difference in the word correct per minute after 9 to 11 weeks of read aloud protocols on the fluency of college EFL learners? And we say 9 to 11 because there was a slight number of weeks applied to each of the levels. So not all of us worked on 9 weeks. Level 8 worked on, you know, the numbers were different. So from 9 to 11 weeks. And the answer that we got for this question is that in general, as you could see in the analysis that Rodrigo presented, the weekly practice continuous, systematic, gave some positive results for the students in the A0 level and students in the upper level. So the extremes, they benefited from it. This study also added to other phonologically based interventions that have demonstrated that interventions of this kind decreased word level decoding difficulties. So students seem to not only increase the pacing of the reading, but also the accuracy with which they read. And in general, this enhanced read aloud fluency in students. And also the biggest gains across measures, all the measures that you saw, the biggest gains were obtained by lowest students in the lowest rank at a faster pace and more significant pace, and then the students in the upper spectrum of the language learning process. And then that blurry area in the middle that we have our hypotheses, as Rodrigo explained, but then these are the ones that we're presenting here, right? Also, as we mentioned, level 6 showed the most inconsistent profile and positive growth in the first few protocols in terms of word correct per minute reported later, an erratic pattern of ups and downs. So there's like no significant, you know, conclusion there, and that's why we have different hypotheses that we have. Although important gains are expected in receptive skills with studies like this, with interventions like this in the first part of language learning process, the measures of word correct per minute and expression scores of this study are evidence of progress in scaffolded productive oral skills. So this is to say that this is meant to be for a receptive skill as reading is. It helps with reading comprehension, it helps with reading fluency, but then ultimately there is evidence of the progress in also productive oral skills.
Yeah, I think that is really important, Erika, that you pointed that out. We always like settle for like to wait for students to have a more intermediate level or for them to get familiar with the content. This is a great study and a great strategy to encourage productive skills even in lower level students, and they get the best out of the intervention. So we don't have to wait that they have some vocabulary or they have some scaffolding going on in their language skills. We can start with this because this is not a creative skill. They are reading, so they get like most of the input and they have scaffolding, and they're hopefully that is going to help them to produce some language. So we move to the conclusions. I really like the reason I asked you that question at the beginning in the warm-up, like of how would you define your experience with COVID, is because this kind of studies actually can be performed online and with students who have certain type of resources. We know we need computers, for example, we need a connection. It doesn't have to be synchronous. They can do that. Our students did not work as synchronously at all. Actually, they were on their own pace. We trained them, we set some deadlines for each protocol, and that's how that really worked. So that takes us to the point of autonomy. This is a good idea to develop autonomy in students. This works really well with adult students. Usually with younger students, there needs to be some more guidance, but for college level or even for students in high school that have the resources that are required, I think this is a really good way to go. Also, as we mentioned before, the technology opens the door. You don't have to be like reading. You don't have to create the test. You don't have to scale the test. You don't have to check for complexity and level. All that is done in these online platforms, so you can just use them with your students, right? And it's really important in these times. For example, in our cases, our students only practice English in the English class. I don't know about you, but like our students only speak English in our English class. And if we were not going to have the English classroom, and we know how the participation is online, they don't have camera, they don't have microphones, these type of strategies can help us to keep them developing their fluency and their L2 proficiency in general, because they are learning vocabulary. That's why they had keywords in the part of the protocol and all that. So this is a really good idea for people who are finding challenging and frustrating, especially the production of oral skills to their students. We also presented in this study evidence of read aloud intervention in a context that had not been reported previously, and with a size that had not been reported previously either. So we have some studies about, obviously most of these studies, like 90-something%, are with L1 struggling children who are behind in the reading process. And this tool, for example, was originally designed for those kids, but we are using it for EFL with all the caveats that it has. We can talk about that later. And we also have a, pretty representative side, we would say, of the context that it was studied in, okay? 88 people. Usually these are case studies, 2 or 3, 4 or 5, maximum 10 students we had seen, but we have 88 students here, so that's also really good to extrapolate in our context. For level 0 and level 8, the progress in fluency was comparatively higher than other studies on L1 low-performing children. So adults, EFL, Spanish as a first language learners make progress way, way faster than children who practice 3 or 4 times a week. So if we want to compare those, and we said like, why would be that? Well, we have a hypothesis that is the cognitive and L1 literacy that they have in Spanish, it really scaffolds their learning process and makes their fluency development go faster. So this is great, and I really like that we found this out, because we always think like there is such thing, we're not going to talk about that, but we always think about the critical period. That is a really good idea that students start early in their language learning process, especially if we want to develop fluency and their speaking skills are good or whatever. But this study actually shows that there is not any problem if you can start as a young kid, great. But if you don't have that opportunity, you have time in your adult life to develop some fluency, and it's not going to take a week or 2 or a month, but you are definitely gonna make fast-paced leaps if you keep consistently practicing in this type of strategies. And this type of intervention in L2 context within the time frame may more strongly benefit the students at the opposite sides of the spectrum. So students in level 0, like super basic beginner students, and students in the higher intermediate level, almost like lower advanced, they are going to take more advantage of this. We know that students in the intermediate levels probably just need more time. I don't think that is that the tool does not work. Probably it's just that students don't need 11 weeks. Maybe they need 15 weeks or 18 weeks to see some progress. And we open the floor for you guys to do those kind of research if you are willing to, okay? Because we are really curious to see what the results would be with a longer intervention in intermediate levels. And finally, oh, that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. If you have any questions or doubts or comments, we saw a couple of questions in the chat and we responded that privately, but as I don't see any other questions.
There was a question which was, I think, targeted. Did the three groups have the same articles to read, or did they individually choose what to read? So that was privately answered, but I think it's an important question to ask for the rest of the audience. The articles were not the same because the levels of students were not the same. So the platform allows you to rank students depending on their proficiency level. And then as a teacher, you can also kind of gauge the level of students and the level of complexity of the texts, both syntactically and lexically, and also in terms of content. Because the platform allows for all of this to be like graded. So,
I think we have a slide that shows that. I think the first table that Jorge presented has that info. Could you go there just like to make sure that that part is super duper clear? There we go. I think next one. Two slides later, next one. There we go. So we have those, right? We have read naturally levels assigned 1.5, 4, and 6. Then read naturally levels go all the way to 8. So those are the levels that they were in, and they have also different thresholds in terms of words correct per minute. So we were working at course level. We were not working with the same levels, but we experienced progress because, you know, like there was not any, it wouldn't make any sense to have students of advanced level to read intermediate or vice versa.
And something important with this, if Rodri allow me to compliment, is this platform in particular allows you to like review the level that students have been assigned. So you can always, depending on how students react to it and what results you get, you can always like take it a level up or a level down until you get to the like the most realistic level. Also, the literature suggests that students should be exposed to texts that are a little bit below their level. So that should be the starting point. The idea is not to give the students initially texts that are above their language proficiency level, because that may be somehow detrimental to their process.
I see a question in the chat, and that is a great question. Thank you, Marilis Aldarriaga. She asked if we would consider that speed rate, I think is the word, rate, might affect comprehension, since it might happen that students focus on reading fluently rather than understanding the text. Reading comprehension is a totally different construct that we did not research in this, but we know that reading fluency is strongly correlated to reading comprehension. It's very unlikely that people read fast or at a good rate something that they cannot make sense of. So we started from there. We did not have any reading comprehension measures because we wanted to focus just in the speaking production, but we know from literature that there is a strong correlation between knowing what you are reading and understanding and reading aloud. Now, I always put the example, think about a language that you don't know. Think about, I don't know, German if you don't know German, or Mandarin if you don't know Mandarin. think if you would be able to read that fluently without knowing what you are reading. It's really hard. You have to know something a little before actually reading those words. So it is exactly the same case in English. I wouldn't be able to read a text, I don't know, in German, because I don't know what I am talking about. I don't know what it's there. So reading comprehension and fluency, read aloud fluency, are strongly correlated. Now, reading comprehension and silent reading are not correlated, but read aloud is. Thank you, Marilis.
There is another question regarding the sample size of group 6. So sample size, this is by Derek Wiggins. The sample size of group 6 shows that is double than the rest of the sample groups. So his question is whether this might have influenced the results somehow.
It could, but we don't think so, because the stats that we run all the corrections that made the data reliable in those terms. Like in the worst case scenario, it would make the results just more reliable, because we have a bigger sample size and we have more power in each of the stats. So if the case was the opposite, we had found significant differences in level 6 and we had not found in the other 2, we would say, oh, maybe we did not have enough power in the stats, or there was something that went wrong with the calculation. But we had a pretty robust linear mixed regression. We put all the factors there, and with the t-test and all that, we made the corrections that we needed to account for any sort of variability that we had in the sample, including the sample size.
And I think you said it, Rodri, but just because it's so important to clarify, reading fluency is not everything in terms of reading comprehension. And that would be a mistake to only concentrate on reading fluency. But reading fluency is definitely a very important part, or a very important step towards reading comprehension. So they should go hand in hand.
Yeah, they are correlated. They are not like 100% correlated. They are not the same, but they have a strong correlations that range from 0.55 to 0.90 or something like that. They are pretty good. And again, we did not do that study, but we saw that in literature.
So I think that we have one more question because of time. Why did you decide to make this research? Is Luz's question.
Yeah, we just wanted to see how effective, of how a good idea this intervention is. I think like we were going to implement this idea because we thought it was a really good idea, but then we said like, how does it work in our context? Because I had the opportunity to use it in another context under other variables. And we said, what if we bring it down here? Where are we going to, what kind of use can we make of that? And for example, one of the things that can happen from a study like this is that we are going to bring it to the, coordinators or, the dean, and we're going to say, how about if we start working with this across all level 0 students, because they are going to make big progress. So it's not only, we are not only thinking about like, oh, we got this and this is in the past. We are also can try that all people in level 0 have this kind of interventions, because they are going to be producing, improving their speaking fluency. If we don't have for all the university or all the students, we can focus in certain parts, because that is the point of research, right? To make change. And we are definitely, I think this is the first time that we present this study, but we are definitely going to make this kind of arguments for these kind of strategies to be implemented across all people, all students in level 0, for example. Let's see how it goes.
Well,
on that note, thank you very much.
There are really some other questions, and we will gonna respond directly to the questions that have been asked, because we have exceeded the time now. And we want once again to thank you for your time and interest in listening to the sharing of this initiative we had here. And we hope to see you soon again.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everybody who's saying thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for attending. It was really fun, actually.
Bueno, muchas gracias por este tiempo, por lo provechoso que ha resultado, Rodrigo, Jorge y Erika. Ha sido un muy buen tiempo. Les recordamos a todos que esta conferencia fue ofrecida por los programas de maestría y especialización en la enseñanza del inglés y maestría, nuestra nueva maestría en lenguaje y sociedad en investigación. En el chat les dejamos los links tanto de la agenda de nuestras coordinadoras, Erika Ferrer, quien nos acompaña, y Diana Chamorro, que también estará muy atenta a todos aquellos que estén interesados en recibir más información sobre estas, agendar unas citas con ella. Los invitamos a seguir conectados con el resto de conferencias en las diferentes áreas del conocimiento que desde Uninorte tenemos para ustedes en el marco de esta jornada virtual de conferencias. Que tengan todos una muy buena tarde.
Buena tarde.